Hello everyone, I am Harshil Jhaveri and my topic for the presentation is very talked about topic in the wireless industry today. My topic is AT&T and T-Mobile merger, the reasons and issues. The merger, which is a very one talked about, is waiting for the decision from the regulatory bodies who are very skeptical about the merger, the antitrust law issues which would come up, and the scenario of a monopolistic market which would be generated with only two major wireless companies, Verizon and AT&T, at the top of the industry. My paper is mainly divided into five main parts. First, the reasons for AT&T call drops. Second, what AT&T needs to do now. Third, the advantages to AT&T and T-Mobile from the merger. Fourth, the advantages to the wireless industry, consumers, and United States. And lastly, the regulatory and policy issues related to the merger. I will conclude with explaining about some key players in the merger based on whose decision will see a revolution in the wireless market. So let's start. So what are the reasons for AT&T over service? AT&T has the largest customer base in the United States with over 95 million wireless customers ahead of Verizon Wireless with 94 million customers. But in the recent time, it has to have a backseat in satisfying its customers. The customers have shown discontent, aggression towards AT&T's poor network. They have experienced frequent call drops and poor internet quality, delayed voice messages, and slow download speeds in their smartphones. AT&T uses GSM for wireless, and the infrastructure which it uses is using time division multiplexing scheme, which has become too old and not not fast enough for 3G and to be deployed 4G network speeds. In a recent survey by ChangeWave Research, AT&T topped the list in the number of call drops and poor customer service with 4.5% call drops. The reason is high internet data traffic from iPhone users who consume more bandwidth for data than any other wireless user. So, Apple decided to make available the iPhone 4 on Verizon Wireless Network from February 2011. How did this affect AT&T? AT&T was the monopoly distributor of the iPhone. Now, due to poor service and increased call drops, it was already facing lawsuits filed against it. Moreover, it lost its monopoly in the market and would also lose its iPhone customers to Verizon after their 2-year contracts. Let's go to the second part of the presentation. The benefits of the merger to AT&T and T-Mobile. So the answer to all of this for AT&T was to deploy a better net infrastructure, broaden the wireless spectrum which is a scarce resource and needs to be bought. But at what cost? 5 years and another $1 billion? The better answer was to buy T-Mobile. Let's see the reasons why AT&T would buy T-Mobile. First, AT&T wants to deploy the 4G LTE network, which is more concerned about the bandwidth requirement for internet surfing and download. With the merger, AT&T gains control over T-Mobile's 7,000 cell towers and 30,000 Wi-Fi hotspots, which are connected by fiber of more bandwidth compared to AT&T. The merger increases customer count of AT&T by 46.5 million. Third, along with the number of customers, the area covered for 4G LTE deployment also increases by 1.2 million square miles. The investment made by AT&T in the infrastructure across the United States would increase by more than 8%. Lastly, it's the best deal for T-Mobile since by itself it is very small on the customer base and infrastructure and could not deploy the LTE network by its own. Also, if the deal does not close, T-Mobile would get $3 billion and some part of AT&T spectrum. Another advantage could be T-Mobile's footprint, which increases by leaps and bounds by joining hands with AT&T. Now let's move on to the advantages to the wireless industry and the consumers. AT&T's merger with T-Mobile will make AT&T's share in the wireless industry to 43%. AT&T's technology ahead of T-Mobile in the LTE deployment, and T-Mobile is ahead of AT&T in HSPA+. Hence, the merger would fasten the deployment of LTE nationwide network. AT&T will merge its 700 MHz spectrum with T-Mobile's AWS spectrum for LTE, which is an effective combined network profitable for both company and its stakeholders. Customers in both companies will see improved voice quality due to the vast spectrum and increased number of cell towers in large infrastructure. The merger increases customer count by 46.5 million, and all these customers would experience the latest 4G technology. The merger takes T-Mobile, which is a German-owned company, into a US-based company. Innovation requires that great minds come together, and merger provides exactly that platform. Knowledge and expertise from both companies would work together to succeed. This value-enhancing acquisition generates more value for the shareholder, which is expected to be $3 billion in 3 years of closing the deal. Apple would benefit greatly from the merger since T-Mobile's customers can now buy the iPhone on their existing network. Advantage is done. Now let me speak about what the consumer has to say. The deal has created an outrage among consumers, journalists, regulatory bodies, and other small wireless service providers. The takeover merges two major wireless providers in the United States, which leaves the consumers to choose from the CDMA provider Verizon Wireless and the very small Sprint. Gigi Son from the digital consumer group Public Knowledge has been quoted saying, "The wireless market, now dominated by four big companies, would have only three at the top. We know the results of arrangements like this: higher prices, fewer choices, and less innovation." The fact that AT&T and T-Mobile would even think of such a combination shows how desperately US needs both strong network neutrality rules and a competition policy that requires dominant broadband providers to make their networks available. T-Mobile customers have access to the Apple iPhone on the newer network, but the overall variety in choosing phones will decrease. Since American phone market is dictated by carriers, the merging two companies into one would definitely reduce options that customers have. Now, moving on to the last part of the presentation, the policy issues in the acquisition. The merger is questioning the US government's ability to deliver solutions for the rising demand on the wireless services. For every wireless provider, the spectrum crunch is an issue when adding customers to its network. The wait for legislation to free up some more spectrum and turn in for auction. But a merger like this need not wait for the government for spectrum, and hence this reduces the pressure on the Federal Communications Commission to free up spectrum. Paul Gallant, an analyst with MF Global, said AT&T's bid for T-Mobile puts a dimmer outlook on the likelihood of lawmakers moving spectrum legislation this year. We would now put the odds of Congress passing major spectrum legislation in 2011 at 35%. FCC Chairman Julius Janowski said in a speech, "If we do nothing in the face of looming spectrum crunch, many consumers would face higher prices, frustrating service, and connections that drop, applications that run unreliably or too slow." The deal is seen with skepticism, and many analysts who believe that passing over the spectrum will create antitrust issues, which would be examined closely by the Federal Communications Commissions and the Department of Justice. To conclude, there are many advantages to the wireless industry in the United States from the merger, but if everything specified by FCC and the DOJ post the merger are followed by AT&T, at the same time, the merger raises T-Mobile's policy issues like special access reform, the D-block auction, and data roaming. There are concerns over the use of traditional antitrust law by regulators, which will draw a great deal of effort from FCC, FTC, and DOJ to demonstrate the merger as harmful for economy and consumers. The acquisition merges only two GSM network providers and leaves the other two, Verizon and Sprint, both CDMA, alone. The main concern now for small players like Metro PCS, Cricket, US Cellular would be to unite and build their own wireless network with an aggregate of 20 to 21 million users. Apart from all the discussion in the paper, the issues and the reasons, the main reason is FCC's strict control over the spectrum, which is of utmost need in providing high-speed mobile broadband. The lack of spectrum, the most valuable resource here, with telecom giants, routes them to an alternative ways to buy it and work towards deploying the infrastructure for 4G. This year, which followed discussions and debates on net neutrality, will see more policy issues discussed and considered before mergers between wireless giants could take place and transform the market. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation and learned a lot from it. If you have any questions, do send me an email. I would get back to you. Thank you so much for viewing my presentation and listening to it.